Welcome and thank you for taking a quick look at this tutorial. So, I was browsing some Pinterest and I saw this amazing image coming up. It's from Modi Studio and I was thinking, can we do this in Blender and what would the animation actually look like if we can animate this? And I came up with this animation and that will be what you're gonna learn in this video. So, I hope you guys are excited and yeah, let's jump right into it. So, this is our whole scene. What we have here is we have our tennis racket, as you can see. And we have this, iridescent kind of shaded plastic or whatever it is, right? It's kind of an imaginary thing. And we animate this with these keyframes, as you can see. So we'll also go over that. And we, of course, have kind of a very easy background. It looks a little bit like a tennis court, just a very simple one with some gold and some different colors, which fit with the colors of our tennis racket. And then we have some of the lighting and, of course, a kind of tennis ball. So it is quite simple. I think everyone will be able to do it. And yeah, let's just start. So we start with a new blend file. We're going to delete this default cube and go click on 7 so you're in the top view. Now I'm going to put in this image. So you can get it in the link down below or you just Google it. Now, what you can do is you can move this. So you can do 0, 0. So it's actually in the middle. The thing is, this image is not really centered perfectly. So we probably need to move it again later. Then we're going to create a plane. The thing that I want to do here is I want to go into edit mode with top and then Ctrl R to actually select an edge loop. Now, if I delete this side, you might think like, why would you add one and then delete one side? That is because our origin is now perfectly in the middle. And if we use a modifier, let's call the mirror modifier, then our origin is already in the middle and it lines up perfectly. So let's do the clipping on, and now when you scale up or down, you can see that we cannot really move it outside of each other. So that's why the clipping. Now, let's scale this a bit down so it fits, and we want to start moving everything around and extruding it. So one thing that you will be able to see is if I move this all the way to the side here, scale it a bit up, you can see that this, at this point it seems to fit perfectly, but here there's a lot of space left. That is because, as I already told you before, this image is not perfectly in the middle. So we can just move this a little bit so we have the same length on each side. And now I can move this around and it should work great, right? Just add some extra edge loops and just create this kind of look. What we need here is we still need a little part that goes over here. So I'm gonna just extrude from here. Bam. Scale a bit down. And then all the way over here. And this should be fine. So let's go back into solid view. And now I want to select everything with A and extrude it around the Z axis. Okay. So around here, choose a thickness that you think is interesting. And this should be fine. So we can kind of hide this image for right now. And we can focus on our tennis racket. So let's rename this plane to tennis racket. Then I'm going to apply my mirror modifier. And I'm going to delete this face on each side. So here, only face. And here, face. Doesn't matter. Okay. So what do we do now? Well, if we use a subdivision surface, we get some extra geometry in here, which is perfect. But it smooths everything also out, which is not necessarily bad, but a lot of the shape goes away, as you can see. So what you could do is you can create some extra edge loops to get the shape back. Before we're gonna do that, I'm gonna show you a tennis racket. I can't make this tutorial too long, so I will go for a simpler option, but I still want to show you how you can create maybe these strings on the outside and this little bevel that goes inwards inside the tennis racket itself. So if we want to create a bevel, what you can do, you can select, let's select from this face all the way around here. And I just hold Ctrl while selecting further. Okay. Just hold Ctrl every time you're selecting. Then click on I to inset. And let's do it around here. Then extrude again and scale inwards. So scale Shift Z so you don't really move around the Z axis. You always want to check around your model if you actually scaled it inwards at all the places, because sometimes, depending on from where you scale, you might get some little overlapping geometry and all that stuff that we don't want. But this seems to work great. Now, let's put this level viewport to 3 and also give this a shade smooth with W. And here we can see what we have. So, looks cool. The thing is, this is a bit too smooth for me still, so I might add another edge loop in here. So let me actually show you. I'm gonna add one here, okay? So let's see what that does to our geometry. You can see that that creates a more of a sharp line here. Perfect. So once you get to know a little bit how geometry works, let's say I want this a bit more round instead of pointy. I personally already know that if I just grab another edge loop in here, that I can just make it look more roundish, or even square if I put it totally together. Now what I want to do is I want to make sure that this iridescent material, let's say just plastic, the plastic needs to fit inside. And I don't want it to just go out of nowhere inside the model. This doesn't make any sense. So what I like to do is create another edge loop right in the middle, then keep it selected and click on Ctrl B to kind of bevel it. And this will create 2 edge loops instead of just 1. So if I just move down a bit, you can see that now I have 2 edge loops. If you extrude it and then scale it up a little bit, we have a very nice kind of indentation where this plastic will fall into. So that's why I create this. And then the next thing, we want some of these wires on the outside, right? It's called string, I think. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just temporarily make an extra edge loop here in the middle, duplicate it with Shift D and then click on P and selection. Now you can see that I have this extra little tennis racket 001, which is just this edge loop, right? We selected it and then we removed it from the model. If we hide this and just look at our tennis racket again, you can see that this part is still here. You can choose to keep it in, but it makes this little part here a little bit more square. I don't like that. So if you click on X and then just dissolve your edge loop, if you just get rid of the edge loop, then everything is back as it used to be and this is more rounded. We still have this shape, right, which we just created, and we can keep going with it. So why do we need this? Well, first of all, I'm just gonna delete the parts that I don't need and then I'll explain to you why. So you just need to delete all of this on each side. Here, and then delete it. Then I like my subdivisions to be at 1 and then apply it. If I don't do it, that's also fine, but you still have a little bit of too many of these kinks inside, let's say. And I wanted it to be a bit more smooth. That's why I just applied the subdivision surface. Now, why do I use this? I am going to change this from a normal model, so I'm going to convert it to a curve, okay? So now this is a curve. So why do we need this curve? Well, let's first create the string. So just grab a cylinder, then I'm gonna put the vertices a little bit down, maybe even 8, so way down, and then cap fill is gonna be nothing. I don't really want any of these caps on top. Then I'm gonna scale this down, and I wanna make it look like it's a one of the strings coming out, okay? So I'm gonna just scale around this, create 3 edge loops, select the middle one, put on my proportional editing, and then move this around the x-axis here. Seems to be okay. Then I can kind of move it back again so it's in the middle again here. And now what I want to do is I want not just one of these, but multiple. So I'm gonna array it. You can see that you have a certain count on here. And the cool thing with an array modifier is it also works with other modifiers. So if I now add a curve modifier and select the curve that we have created before, you can see that my array now goes around my curve. So if I put this count up, it goes all the way around. So now it follows the curve, which is perfect. Of course, we need to rotate the string as well. So I'm just going to select it, rotate. Let me get the proportional editing tool off and rotate it around the y-axis for 90 degrees. And let's look what that looks like. Looks already better, but I need to rotate it around the x-axis as well. So now we have these nice little curves outside, which is perfect. Let's get our tennis racket back. And here we can see what we did. So first of all, they need to be way smaller. Right? That is just one thing that is very obvious. And around this size will be great. So you can put a morph space between them. You can do that with the vector, right? Here, this x. Put some more space in between them. And you can change the count. You can also move this a little bit. It's a bit weird, but if you move around, let's say the y-axis, you can see that it goes outwards. X-axis, it goes around your curve, and Z-axis goes just up and down. So I'm gonna do the X-axis for right now, and move it to here, and let's see where it ends. And here, let me move some stuff back again. This seems to work great. Awesome. So here we have our tennis racket and we have our string. Let's rename this to string, and that is what we need. So now we need a tennis ball, right? So that's just going to be a very simple UV sphere. We can change the size later as well. So just do it like this and then tennis ball. And as last, we need the plastic, right? So what I want to do is I want to hide the subdivision surface for right now. And I want my plastic to be perfectly in the middle. So I am going to create another edge loop here in the middle. Shift D to duplicate it, P and selection. So here what we have is we have this tennis racket 002, it's called now. So this one is the curve, if you still remember. And then tennis racket 002 is going to be the plastic. So plastic. We want to fill this up. So select 4 vertices, then click on F to fill it up with a face. And then select these 2 vertices and fill this further up. So you want to fill it up until you have, let's look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, let's do until you have 5 of these vertices on one side. Same here, F, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now, if you create 3 edge loops here, you can fill this up, up, up. Again here, fill, 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 fill. Why do I do it like this? That is because I want kind of square topology in the middle. This is because I'm gonna subdivide it upwards, so I want more subdivisions. I'm gonna use shape keys and then I want to sculpt it. So the best way to use sculpting when you're using shape keys is to actually have nice square geometry, and that is why I'm gonna do it. Now that we have finished our 3D models, we can go and create some shape keys. Let's start with the shape keys. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to create some extra subdivisions. So let's put it at 3 and apply. Then shape keys. Bases is just what we see now. This is our base. Then we can have another shape key. So whatever you do in key 1 can be animated. So let's say I'm just gonna select this one, put my proportional editing tool on and move this downwards. You can see that if I go back outside of edit mode, that nothing happened. Why is that? That is because my key is set at 0. So key 1 is set at 0, which means just the base is working right now, right? If I put it to 1, then the key 1 is all the way working. And in between is kind of a mix in between them, as you can see right here. So, very cool. And why is this handy? Well, we can animate this. As you can see here, I could just right click and insert keyframe whenever I want. You can have multiple keys, right? So you can go very much into depth with this, but we're just gonna stay at 1 for right now. And yeah, this is kind of what it does. So let's go back, Ctrl Z a few times. And if it doesn't work, if you already are too far, you can just delete this keyframe. So just minus, and we still have our base, which is good. So you can just click plus again, and here we have another key 0, right? So you can rename this to whatever you want. I don't really have a good name for it right now. Maybe plastic band. I don't know. Just make something up, just so you remember what it does. So the one thing that you gotta keep in mind is if it's just at 0 and you have selected the shape key, then go into edit mode, you can already change everything here. So I think it's quite interesting what we just had actually, but I want it to be more in the middle. So let's say I'm selecting it here and move it around, so GZ. And here you can see that we have, yeah, a decent movement. So let's move it all the way over here. That looks okay, right? It's not the best, it's not the worst, but something like this. Then if you put it to 1, you get this keyframe. One problem, if you sculpt, so let's say I'm sculpting here, and I'm gonna put just some, let me actually do just a normal brush here. You can see that nothing works. Why is that? That is because our plastic band is set at 0. If you want to sculpt shape keys, you have to put this value at 1 and then go into sculpting. So now if I move this around, you will be able to see that also with this shape key, I have my sculpt in there. So if I put at 0, it will still be bases, but now actually the sculpt's working. So when you're sculpting, make sure to put the shape key that you're working on 1. Now, what do we want to do here? Well, I want to use some cloth. The cloth is a little bit weird because it just looks like one brush and it already works when you're using it, which is totally fine. It's perfect, right? The one weird thing about it is that if you go here into your tools, so active tool, then you can see that your cloth brush has a lot of options. Other brushes also have a lot of options, but with the cloth brush you have also some deformation options. So now we have drag, but you can see that you can do snake hook, expand, drag, and all of these have, kind of work a little bit different. So right now I'm just gonna, look what the drag does. It kind of creates some cool effects, but is it what I want? Yeah, it depends. I might use grab in this case, because I can grab this a little bit down and move it downwards. And that might work better in this case, right? But you can also combine them together. So let's say I use grab and then want to use some inflate. So I'm gonna inflate a little bit. All of this is possible, and you should just really play around with this, okay? One thing is this outside, you do not really want it to change too much, this outside. So what you could do before you're gonna sculpt on here, you can create a mask. So here with the mask, and you can mask this outside around. What this does is everything that is black, which is the mask, will not be moved by any of your sculpting tools. Okay? And anything that is, of course, white, or the normal matte cap color, will be changed, and everything in between is kind of a fall off, right? So here with mask, you have a lot of tools what you can do with the mask that you have created. So with mask, I can invert the mask, so you can see that now it's different way around. I can do that. I can fill the masks, which will just fill everything, but I can also, for instance, smoothen the mask. So now the mask is more smooth, which is perfect. I can shrink it as well, so maybe I painted a bit too much. You can always shrink it a little bit. So play around with those options, those will always work. And I'm gonna use our cloth, let's put it at grab for right now, move it downwards, and I'm gonna create some of these nice shapes in here. And it just needs to look interesting to you guys, okay? So I can spend as much time as I want here, but you really should try it out yourself, because otherwise it's just so hard to explain, right? Because there's so many things you can do here, and you just want it to look a little bit cloth-like. So if you want to clear your mask, just go to mask, and then it should be here somewhere. Clear mask, and we can even smoothen this out if we want a little bit. Let's say this is our final result. I want to add a subdivision surface, and I also want to make sure that if I go here, I will do a shade smooth with W. So this is kind of the final result, whatever, and we're gonna unhide all of the other stuff. And we can kind of get rid of this image, to be honest. So just delete the image and unhide this other stuff here, and it looks quite great in my opinion. Then what we want to do is we want to start animating. So let me explain what I animated. The first thing that actually happens is this sphere is falling down. This rotation of the tennis racket I actually made way later, just to make it look more interesting. But the first thing that happens is this part here falls down. Then what happens, once it reaches this, we are starting to animate our keyframe, right? So it looks like this ball is actually moving this downwards. It is not, it's just a key shape. Then we just repeat everything, but we kind of reverse it, right? So this key shape goes all the way to 0 again, so to the basis, and then instead of falling, this one goes upwards, right? This tennis ball goes upwards. Also, which is a little bit hard to see, but if you look good, I created this empty. Once my tennis ball actually touches the tennis racket actually moves a little bit inwards, so it goes a little bit like this around the x-axis, right? But it's just a very little bit, and it makes it look way more smooth, the whole animation. So that is one thing that I also did. And then, of course, the rotation. So this is a lot of information. We're just gonna start very simple, okay? The first thing that we want to do is we want to move this, tennis ball. At the end of our animation should be around here, right? So this seems to be okay. It can be a little bit inside, that's totally fine, because we're gonna look at our model like this, right? So we're not gonna see this bottom part. So this is, what we have here is quite fine. So this is going to be the middle keyframe. So let's decide, we're gonna have an animation of 80 frames. Then in the middle, both the UV sphere, which is the tennis ball, is going to be here, so I, and then we're gonna have a location, and this plastic is going to be at plastic band 1, right? Right click, insert keyframe. Then at frame 1, our tennis ball should be way higher, right? We should not be able to see it with our camera. So let's put our camera actually in position. We have our camera here. Click on 0 and you go to your camera view. Click on view and camera to view. So here, let's say we're gonna make it from here. Around here will be fine. Then turn off camera to view. And here we can start animating this little sphere here. So at frame 1, it should be around here. It's outside of the camera view, and it will fall down, right? So if we play this, you can see that it moves down and then falls in here. Perfect. And at frame 80, it should go all the way up again, right? So I can just copy frame 1, Ctrl-C, and then click on Ctrl-V while we are at frame 80, and then we just copy this keyframe. So you can see that now it will go down and it goes up, right? So perfect, that's kind of what we need. So now we need to animate this accordingly. So let's just put at frame 20, we just put this at 0 and then insert keyframe. And now we need to kind of check once this tennis ball is hitting the plastic, then it only needs to deform. So you can see that now it already deforms a bit too early, right? So around here, around frame 27, it should start to deform. So just move this keyframe up. You can just select the keyframe and click on G to move it. And then it should move with it. You can see that it goes a bit too quick. You can do this in multiple ways. You can move it again, maybe a little bit to the left. That could work. Look. Already works way better, actually. Boink. Yes, that works great. So around frame 25, it starts to move, right? We start to going from a value 0, and then at frame 40, we are at value 1. So it will probably also work the other way around. So we can copy this, Ctrl-C, and frame 25, so that will be 15 frames later. So frame 55, it should be at frame 0 again. So just Ctrl-V. So just copy this keyframe, or you can just put this at 0 and then replace keyframe. Let's go to our camera view and actually see what this looks like. Doink. Perfect, looks quite cool. You can, of course, change a lot because around frame 49, you can see that we're totally in here. We don't want that. So how do we change this? Let's expand this and put the graph editor here. And here you can see that we have our graph editor. The cool thing about the graph editor is that we are working, like these keyframes are actually working with curves. So here you can see that we can move this a bit around. And you can, of course, see what it does to our animation. So here, you kind of want to find a middle ground. So here it seems already, it seems to work quite well, in my opinion. And yeah, it's not perfect. If you want it to be perfect, then you should really play a lot around with it. But that's totally up to you, okay? But that is kind of how I like to edit them. So now that we animated both our UV sphere, so our tennis ball, and our plastic, we can start to also get some extra small animation there to make it look even more smooth. So what I like to do here is I like to select these 4 vertices, click on Shift S and do cursor to selected. Because I selected these 4 here, then the selection will be totally in the middle. You can also just do 8 of these, right? Shift S and then cursor to selected. That's also totally fine. Create a empty, so empty, plane axis, and then we want to parent everything towards this point. So here select the plastic, the tennis racket, the string, but also the curve you should select, okay? So also the curve. Then as last, the empty, Ctrl P and set parent to object. So wherever I move this, you can see that everything moves with it. Very cool. So what do we do here? We want to animate this as well. So I'm gonna grab another timeline in here, just so we can see our keyframes again and we're not getting too confused. But what we can see is that at this point here, the lowest point, we might want to rotate this just a tiny tad bit. We can go to frame maybe 38, just put our rotation here where it should be. Then at frame 42, also rotation. Why do I put these here? That is because in this orientation, it actually is already good, right? But we want it to go at frame 40, we want it to go a little bit down. So just move a little bit, that little bit, rotation, and now you'll be able to see what it does. So you can see that it's a bit too janky, right? It's just a bit too quick. So you just want to move these around so it looks more smooth. Maybe move that a little bit more around, maybe a 30. Yeah, it looks way better. So let's do 30 and 50. So at 30, we are not rotating it at all. It's nice and stationary. And then at 40, it goes down a little bit by, I'm not sure how many degrees, 0.735 in this case. And then it goes all the way back to the normal rotation again. So you can see that we have a little bit of a movement in here, which makes it look way more smooth, right? And way more interesting. So, and then as last, I also rotated it around the y-axis. But that is up to you. You don't have to do that. This already looks great. Let's start with our lighting. It's just going to be very simple. We're just going to use an hdri. So here, let's go to shading. Click on world. Add an environment texture. And we're going to use an hdri. And I'm going to use the cloud layers 4K. You can also download this in the link down below. Open image. And once you go here into your viewport shading, you can kind of see what it's doing, the hdri. Otherwise, you cannot see it at all. I personally like to work inside cycles instead of Eevee. The thing is, cycles is way slower, as most of you already know. But to make it faster, you can do this to GPU. So you will use your GPU instead of your CPU. If it is not really working, you can go to Preferences. And then go to System, go to the CUDA. And you can see that now I have a very, very old GTX right now. I am waiting for my new one, but it's taking so long. I'm already waiting 2 months, and I probably have to wait another 5 months, whatever. But at this point, we're using this one. And then if you're using your GPU, you want to put these tiles up to 256 by 256. If you're using your CPU, you kind of want to keep them lower. So maybe 17 by 17, I think, is the best for a CPU. So now that we have this, that works great. We also want to use denoising. So denoising makes you able to create very nice looking renders without going way too high in your sampling, okay? So make sure you put your denoising on. So in this case, I'm gonna put my render. NLM is probably fine. I don't really know a lot about it. I just know that it works great. It really saves me a lot of time. Now, at 0, we can look here, and I'm gonna put my viewport down just because otherwise my recording is gonna get very laggy. But you should just keep it at 32. Then I will look here and see what my lighting is doing. So here we have a lighting, which looks fine. You could go here into film and do transparent on, so we don't really see the hdri around here. And we can start to focus on our materials. So let's say we want some more interesting materials. Well, let's go back to Object, select our tennis racket, click on New, and you can also rename this to tennis racket. And then this is going to be the tennis racket material. So I personally did purple, but you should really choose whatever you think looks cool. And then put the roughness a little bit lower, just because I want some more reflections on there. And that is essentially already the material for this tennis racket. Then we have our strings here, so string. And for the string, as well as our tennis ball here, I thought it would look cool if we use a whole different kind of material. So I actually did a kind of a gold material, right? So it's going to be metallic all the way up. We just need a more of a gold looking material here. Color. And the roughness, let's put it to 0.2 or 0.3. We can use the same material for this sphere here. And you can, of course, play around with the roughness as much as you want. Maybe you like 0.3, whatever. So now for the most kind of interesting material that we're going to create, we're going to use this one here. And it's going to be an iridescent kind of material. So let's rename this to plastic. And this is going to be a little bit of a bigger setup than the other ones. Essentially, what we want to do here is we want to move our animation a little bit further. Here, timeline goes in the middle, because I want to see kind of what it looks like with the indentation in it, right? Then I'm going to make my material section way bigger, just so you guys can see what is happening here. And I'm going to add a color ramp. So for the color ramp, I'm going to use HSL. And one color here is going to be purple. So I'm going to just do red and blue. And this other side is going to be the same, red and blue. but I'm gonna put near to far. So now it uses all of these colors in between, which is very cool. Now, I'm gonna put a hue and saturation in between here as well, because I want to, be able to play a little bit around with those options. So if you put them in here, you can see that now we just have green, which is kind of the middle. Is that what we want? No, not really. And now I'm going to add a layer weight, put it to facing. So now you can see that we have a very different kind of look to it. So if I put this to 0.85, then we have, just something looking very cool. And you can also play around with the hue, saturation. I think I put it 0.6. I'm just going to do everything what I did in my preview, 0.7. But it was just mostly playing around with the options. So this was what I did here. Then we want to match this up. So also the roughness is going to be all the way at 0. And I'm going to mix this with a mix shader and a glossy shader. So glossy is going to be here. It's going to be mixed with the principal shader. And I'll put this at 0.4. So we're going to mix this with another layer weight. Layer weight, facing, in effect, and we can put this to 0.7. Now, as last, I want to use another mix shader with a transparent shader and then join them together. And we kind of want to play around with them, so 0.6 will work great in this case. This material is actually exactly the same material that I used also in my preview. I just copied every single setting here. So don't be afraid that it might not look the same. Even mine doesn't really look the same. It is also very dependent on the wrinkles that you have in your plastic. Also the lighting plays a lot in it. And of course the background that we didn't create yet. But this is kind of what we have here. Then next thing, we need to create our little tennis court here. So scale this up. And then let's move it down. So I'm not going to explain how to create the tennis court. I think you guys can make that yourself, right? The other stuff was way more difficult. So if you already went through here, you can probably also make a background yourself. It doesn't have to be a tennis court. You can make whatever you want. And as last, I want to thank you guys dearly. I really enjoy creating these tutorials for you guys. And just the response has mostly been amazing, actually. And yeah, just thank you. If you want to support me in any kind of way, you can do it on Patreon. I think that's the best way right now. Or on my own website where you can buy some courses. It works also great. All the links are down below. And thank you, and I'll see you guys in the next one.